Hello, welcome back to Watches Oliver Smith. I'm with my good friend, Mr. George Reed, the Director of Fine Timepieces here at Oliver Smith Jeweler. And we're sitting in Scottsdale, Arizona. We are really excited to talk to you about a piece that we picked up this week in a pre-Vendome 209. But first we want to talk about how difficult it is to understand the pre-Vendome Panerai pieces. And tell us what pre-Vendome means.
Well, I mean, really any historic Panerai, there's so much research that has to go on, but pre-Vendome means that in 1997, a company called Vendome purchased Panerai from the original family. So anything just before that, say 93 to 97 is that very, very slim line of what we call pre-Vendome. It was when Panerai wasn't under military contract anymore, and they were making watches in the form that they wanted to do. Right. And then the purchase happens, so everything after that is what we call a modern Panerai.
Right, and then we have historic Panerais that came, which we term historic, that came from World War II.
Correct. A
little bit after, there were some Panerais made for the Egyptian services also.
The military
and then it kind of went quiet for 30 years, right? Until the 90s where production started up again. So today, we're going to also talk to you about a few homage pieces we have, and that's really kind of muddy water. So you got to stick around for that one. But first, we're going to talk about the 201, which was the first series of Panerai's reintroduction into the watch business in 1993, 1994. And the really interesting thing about this reintroduction were the dials.
Yeah.
George, tell us what's going on with these dials.
So these are both basically the same reference. These are both 5218 201As. But what we have here is a matching and a non-matching dial. And what that means is due to international regulations, there was an entire series of dials that had a lacquer put on them because the watches had the tritium. And the tritium interacted with the lacquer and made this absolutely beautiful ochre dial. And if you didn't know any better, you'd assume that the hands came on later, that it was a service hands. But no, this is actually all original. This is how this watch came. And it was kind of funny, too, because now these are some of the most sought-after pieces. But early on, there were people who actually sent the watch back and had the dial replaced. Yeah. So there are a few references of this that are actually should be non-matching, but are actually matching. So that even muddies the water further.
Yeah, so we want to do a shout out to our friends who wrote the book, the limited edition book, Panerai, the Italian Story, which you can get off the web if you'd like to buy one. I highly recommend it. There's 2 parts to that series that has really helped us in our research. And we want to reach out to Rolf and Volker, who also produced a 2-series vintage Panerai book collection, which is also a must for anybody that wants to study vintage Panerais. And a third place to look too would be online with Periscope.
Absolutely.
Our friend Jose Perez, whose really in-depth coverage is over the top in information and really, really well done. So we've employed all of their help over the last couple of years to try to figure out what we have, right? But let's talk about the 209 then, George.
So the 209, and this one originally scared me because this is so start with 201, and this is the 209. So this is 1996. This was literally the last run of pre-Vendome. And so to say they're rare would be grossly understating it. I think they made, how many did they make? 10, 12?
They ended up making 12, according to the Italian Story, this book series. And this was number 1. This was the Commander Z's watch.
So, and that's why this scared me. It's like every once in a while somebody goes, hey, I've got a unicorn for sale. And you're like, well, that's not a thing. And that was my first reaction. So Oliver took it under his wing and ran with it. So this is almost a year and a half of Oliver vetting this specific watch to prove me wrong. But so this watch not only comes complete, it is documented in the book. We have everything.
Really interesting. The same Post-it note too. When I opened up this box and I saw the Post-it note, I was like, what the heck? And then I realized that in the Panerai Story, it actually shows the Post-it note. So how neat is that?
So we have the box, the cover, we've got the extra set of screws, all the way down to the book,
With the signatures and the stamps.
With the signatures that match, it is number one. Maybe I'll do that under this one. That might be a little easier for you.
And it's registered to Z, too.
And it is registered to the chairman of Panerai at the time, Dino Z.
Yeah.
Now, Oliver took it a step further. And this is where it got great because we have emails going back and forth between Oliver, Jose Perez of Periscope, who had actually reached out to Z himself. And Z himself came out and said, yeah, no, that's absolutely my watch. So that was finally enough for me. And Oliver and I went through it, and he wrote the check, and we actually have this watch here at Oliver Smith Jeweler.
So if you have any interest in this piece, do give us a call. The last thing we want to talk about is something that struck us when we bought a collection of Panerais about 3 years ago.
Yeah.
And
you've seen videos of that. That was the big black box with all the watches in it. There was some really cool stuff, but it really covered all the generations of Panerai.
Right.
There were World War II stuff in there. There was that kind of middle gray area. There were pre-Vendome stuff and modern.
Right.
And with that, we in doing that, we discovered some of these as well. And this is a really weird, murky area with Panerai. We're just going to call them the homage pieces. At one point, this kind of tanked the market. You had
confused the market for sure.
It confused the market for sure.
It made people nervous about what they were buying.
Absolutely.
Because they were being presented with, some of them are correct movement, correct case, correct crown, but maybe not the correct
data manufacturer for sure.
Manufacturer. The dials were all kind of moved around, and that can happen even on an old piece. But this riveted dial is obviously not something that's from the 40s when it was originally made. Because
the font's
this
wrong.
Is plastic, it would have fallen apart.
And there were rivet dials, a few examples that were done. This is not one of them.
But as you can see from the movements too on these pieces, is that a lot of the movements are correct. I mean, these are old Rolex movements. So how these watches got back into the public hands is a little confusing for us, and we're not going to speculate on that because we don't have enough information. We just know that the fellow who sold them to us told him that he bought them out of Italian jewelry stores in Rome, and well, I don't know, probably the 2000, 2010,
early 2000s,
probably something like that. And so this is why it's so confusing and why you need really good documentation if you're going to enter into the Panerai PreVendome and historic collections. But we're here to help, so if we can help you with any of your searches for Panerais, please give us a call and let us know. And stay safe. Have a great week.
Thanks, folks.